Welcome to Mr. Giant Reacts and Ting and Ting and Ting. I'm Mr. Giant, back with another video for y'all. And this one is called How Americans Are Tricked into Buying Fake Food. Man, here's the thing though. I don't think they're being tricked anymore. They already know. They just don't really care anymore. You know what I mean? Because nobody reads the labels or nothing like that. I work at a grocery store, so I see people come in there with all kind of fake food, boy. You know, the whole cart is full of fake food. You know, there's no vegetable, like real vegetable or nothing like that. It's just like TV dinners, you know what I mean? Yeah, I'm watching them come through there with that, and I'm like, wow, you know. They know, they just don't care anymore. Let's YouTube and simmer and see what the idea behind tricking people into eating fake food. Let's get it.
Okay. So you think this is olive oil, right? Wrong. Well, maybe some of it is, but this is actually a classic example of food fraud.
Extra virgin olive oils are being switched out with cheap ones.
And fraudulent to sell something labeled as something else.
Why is this fish being mislabeled?
Your Parmesan cheese products do not contain any Parmesan cheese.
What?
There was no one brand that stood out as completely safe.
Wow, so we can't eat anything.
I guarantee you, anytime a product can be passed off as something more expensive, it will be. It's that simple.
Counterfeits, dilution, substitution, and mislabeling. Food fraud not only harms consumers' wallets, it puts their health and safety at risk.
We might not know the overall impact of food fraud because so much of what fraudsters do is hidden from us and has been for centuries.
Some estimates say food fraud affects at least 1% of the global food industry.
Wow.
This as high as $40 billion a year, according to the Food and Drug Administration.
Grocery Manufacturers of America estimated that 10% of the commercially available food in the United States is adulterated. That's 1 in 10. It means if you're not on that 8-item or less checkout line, you've got something in your cart when you leave the supermarket that's probably bogus.
Here's
Wow.
how and why fake food sits secretly in our kitchen cabinets. According to the FDA, food fraud is considered economically motivated adulteration, or EMA.
It's a monetary impact to the consumer and to the food manufacturers, but it's also a potential public safety, public health impact. It robs us of nutrients and can kill people and has done.
Larry Olmsted researched food fraud for years and published his book, Real Food, Fake Food, in 2016.
As I worked on this book, my definition of fake food became anytime what you buy is not what you think you're buying. It doesn't really matter whether it's legal or illegal. It's where you're being tricked. You're buying something that's
Wow.
not what you think it is.
The worst of
I ain't gonna lie to you. Right off the rip, this is kind of aggravating me. You know what I'm saying? All for the cause of money. You know what I mean? And here's the thing, you know? Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. On the island, we didn't hear much about cancer at all because there a lot of the people have a backyard where they grow their own stuff. You know what I mean? And when we grow our own stuff, we don't use fertilizers that we buy from the store. When I was there, what we use is you go out into the field and you pick up some cow dung, we call it. Man, I say hate doing that, but my mom used to send me out to the field and pick up these big globs of cow dung to help the manure. Or people have compost heaps, you know, where they toss their unused like vegetable and stuff, and you know. But there, a lot of people, or the majority of the people, have a backyard garden where they have the cabbages, the carrots, the tomatoes, everything, and also everything is kind of natural. Like, I never really went to the doctor or to the hospital when I was home, and I left the island when I was like 20. You know what I'm saying? And but I came here and everybody's got an ailment. That's where I live here. People eat a lot of preserved foods, man. A lot of foods with preservatives in it. You know what I mean? And I've had so many people that I've known in the last 2 years die of cancer. That has to be a contribution. It has to be. polluted air, but it's the consumption of food that's not healthy. Everything is, and like I said, I work in a grocery store. You go through there, man, there's no way that all that food could be legal in any grocery store. There's no way because of mass production so that they could get it out there as cheap as possible and have a profit come in. They got to be doing some food fraud in all of these grocery stores and even fast food restaurants. I don't eat fast food at all. I don't trust them. Let's get going here.
Offenders can include seafood, meat, dairy, honey, alcohol, spices.
The fraud happens more with more expensive foods. Totally makes sense, right? There's a higher margin.
Take your extra virgin olive oil as an example.
Okay.
Fraud usually occurs here when a cheaper oil is added to the more expensive oil, and the label still reads 100% extra virgin olive oil. That's food fraud.
Olive oil has been adulterated for thousands of years because it is of high value and it is sought out.
They might flavor it with beta carotene and maybe color it with a little chlorophyll to make it a little more green. And so then you've got a lower quality, cheaper oil.
So both of these olive oils I got at the grocery store, and both of them are the store brand, but one cost way more than the other. This one had a label of 100% Mediterranean blend of extra virgin olive oil. So the olives were sourced from a bunch of different European countries, and it said it was packed in Italy, and there was no expiration date. And when I purchased this one was a 100% California extra virgin olive oil. First pressed, cold pressed, unfiltered, no artificial colors, preservatives, or flavors. And this one had an expiration date. It said that these olives were harvested in October, November 2022, and that it would be good on your shelf until August 2024. And it was much more expensive. Roughly twice as much as this olive oil. And this one had way more information about where this olive oil came from. Now let's look at the spice market as another one that's vulnerable to fraud. Think of an expensive spice like saffron. This tiny amount cost me $20 at the store. Saffron can be bulked up with some other material like plant stems and sold as the same, according to the FDA.
Popular spices like basil and chili powder from a range of different brands.
Anything that's kind of colored orange, brown, and ground up can be passed off as turmeric.
It's the ultimate bait and switch.
And then there's fish. The FDA says seafood fraud can occur when a less expensive species of fish is substituted for a more expensive species. After all, it's kind of hard to know what fish you're buying, right?
If you're an experienced chef or fishmonger, you can look at like a red snapper fillet and tell whether it's red snapper, but 99% of consumers can't. Most of the fish we eat is whitefish. Every fillet looks pretty much the same, which is why there's so much substitution. The FDA is mandated by law to inspect 2% of the imported seafood, which is, I think, a very, very low bar.
In fact, the U.S. imports as much as 85% of its fish.
But federal fisheries enforcement is serious business. Agents from NOAA and U.S. Customs tear open a container filled with frozen fish from Thailand. They're looking for fraud.
First, it's important to understand the matrix that food fraud lives in. There's intentional and...
See, I don't even buy fish anymore, you know what I mean? Because I used to buy salmon a lot. And then when I first started buying salmon, I noticed that the color was different. It was gray, and I was always puzzled as to why salmon is gray. It's supposed to be pink, So I did some research and I realized if they farm the salmon, it turns out gray. But if it was caught in the wild, it's pink. But then they smartened up. So what they started to do is put the dye in the fish so that it looks like the ones coming from the ocean. Now, if you do that, you have to know that's going to harm human beings. So now you don't know what is what. It's because you go to the grocery store and they all look pink. I rarely see any gray salmon out there anymore. I'm going back to the island, man. Let me catch my own food, you know what I'm saying? Because this is just getting out of hand. And it's all because of capitalism and profit and thing.
unintentional types of food risk. Unintentional risks include food safety and quality, like accidental foodborne illnesses.
CDC estimates about 50 million people a year contract a foodborne illness. Only 20%, 1 in 5 of those can be identified. So there's 40 million people a year getting sick from something they ate that we don't know what it is. And a good guess would be that fraud has something to do with that.
Then there's
Now that's why I don't eat fast food. Because when I first came here, there wasn't any fast food on my island when I came to America. And I remember driving down, I played basketball at a small college in Kentucky. And I remember when we get to that small town, they were driving down this row of restaurants. And they asked me, what do I want to eat if I'm hungry? And I said, yes, I'm hungry. And they went through all the fast food chains. And I ain't never seen nothing like that before. So I'm like, but I ended up choosing Kentucky Fried Chicken because chicken was in it. That was the only reason why I chose it, because I didn't know this. I didn't eat burgers probably once or twice before I came to America. I didn't eat burgers at all. But I did try fast food, but then I noticed every time I tried eating fast food, I'd get sick. My stomach would be rumbling, you know what I mean? I got sick. And at times I used to throw it back up. And even the cafeteria food where I went to college, everybody else was fine with it. But the minute I eat it, so I was pretty much reserved to eating twigs and branches. That's what they tell me at work. I eat twigs and branches because I was just eating vegetables straight, which wasn't good because they was trying to put weight on me to play ball. But I've noted, and even to this day, I don't eat any fast food whatsoever. I think the last time I went to a fast food restaurant was, good Lord, about 10 years ago, and we were traveling, and of course I got a chicken sandwich, and it didn't sit too well with me, so I kind of stay away from that. After eating all that natural stuff coming out of my backyard, my eggs came out of my backyard, all my vegetable came out of my backyard, even the cow's milk came straight from the cow. I don't even drink milk here. I doubt I'll be drinking milk again. I drink almond milk now. Some say that's not good for you. I heard there's an oatmeal milk. Some say that's not good for the environment. What are we supposed to eat anymore? You know what I mean? Let's get back to this here.
intentional. That's where food fraud is alongside food defense. The difference is fraud is motivated by economic gain and defense is motivated by harm.
If you have a ton of coffee and you can turn that into 1.2 tons by adding some cheap filler to it, you've just increased your profits by 20%. And a lot of these products pass through a lot of hands. They go from small growers to big trucks to tankers to boats to processing plants. It's not necessarily like this big company that's selling you coffee that's ripping you off. It can happen in a lot of ways along the way.
Even the FDA says it can't estimate how often this fraud happens or its economic impact. Over the last 10 years, the most common fraud committed is lying about an animal's origin and dilution or substitution, both ranking at 16% of incidents recorded. Dilution and substitution are exactly what they sound like. Perhaps somewhere along the supply chain, the real expensive process of refining something like fresh olives is ignored. Maybe a little canola oil is added instead. Then there's the removal of value, when an ingredient or part of a food is intentionally left out, taken out, or substituted altogether. And that substitute can be a non-food substance. That's the 14% of the recorded food fraud incidents using non-food substances.
The pandemic has given us a chance to focus on supply chains and forced us to.
For example, during the pandemic, labeling fraud really spiked in 2021 to 21% of the types of fraud that were committed and recorded.
If we knew all about it, why hasn't it been solved? The key was we weren't focusing on prevention. Food fraud prevention, if we do it right, is boring. We're the fire marshal checking exits and smoke alarms, not catching the bad guys.
Wow.
The US has laws in place to ensure food safety. That's part of what the FDA does today.
Basically, all food fraud, all product fraud is illegal under one law or another, somehow.
Before the FDA existed, manufacturers could add basically whatever they wanted into the food. Think of Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. That book was published in 1906. That same year, food safety regulation began with the Meat Inspection Act and the Pure Food and Drugs Act, which outlawed adulterated and misbranded food items.
To protect consumers,
This ultimately led to the creation of the FDA.
the Food and Drug Administration.
See, I remember, I guess it was about 5, 6 years ago, there was a big thing where one of the Caribbean islands, and I'm not even going to name names, it's not my island, but one of the Caribbean islands was getting rice from another country. And come to find out that intermingled into the rice was actual little styrofoam things that looks like rice, but it wasn't rice, it was actually styrofoam itself, y'all. All for profit. You know what I'm saying? That's crazy. To think that you're going to do that to people just so that you can have money. The question is, are they doing it to their own people though? Or is it just to export to other people? They don't really matter. But I remember that was a big deal 5 or 6 years ago on one of the Caribbean islands. Crazy, huh? Wow. You know what I mean? And now we live in these concrete jungles. Nobody's got a plot of land to grow their own stuff. It's going to be only a matter of time before they're going to make it against the law to grow your own vegetable in your, because some people grow vegetable in pots and stuff. In big cities and all of that, but sooner or later they're going to make it illegal to do that. Like here, it's illegal to gather rainwater. The idea is that the rainwater might have some toxicity to it. What kind of direction are we heading in, boy? We're going to have companies controlling the water. They already control the food, obviously.
Since then, laws have hit the books to further food safety protocols, like the Food Safety Modernization Act signed into law in 2011.
And then horse meat hit.
The fraud was on a grand scale
Horse meat was blended into beef in the UK, across Europe.
and sold to unsuspecting supermarkets for a period of 8 months in 2012.
Wow.
Scandal was
And that was great wake-up call.
Some companies purposely mislead on labels.
Prosecuting the fraudsters committing the crime can be tricky. After all, they're purposely trying to avoid that detection. But criminals are caught. Like in 2016.
Product labeled Market Pantry 100% Parmesan contained cheaper Swiss and cheddar cheese and an organic filler called cellulose, which can be derived from wood pulp.
Castle Cheese was caught adding wood pulp and cheddar to its grated Parmesan that they sold as 100% Parmesan cheese.
The FDA does allow fillers like cellulose in cheese, but it can only make up 4% of the total ingredients.
The president of the company got a $5,000 fine, 200 hours of community service, and 3 years of probation.
For its part,
That's all he got. No wonder why the profits far outweigh the punishment. Because I guarantee you, he's still going to be part of making some money off of the vibe. Even if they fired him, he still made about a few million. Just move on to the next. Wow, they catch you with a freaking a joint and they toss you in jail for 3-4 years.
the Food and Drug Administration says its job is to make sure food doesn't hurt you, not to police the labels.
Fraud is tough for the consumer in terms of food because it's difficult. They don't have a lab in their kitchen.
The Food Fraud Prevention Think Tank has a 5-question survey consumers can use when shopping for food. 1, what type of product is it?
Be aware of product that you put on you, in you, or plug in the wall.
2, quality. Can you recognize the difference between the products? If you can't easily tell the difference, that makes you more vulnerable to fraud.
If I drink scotch, I couldn't tell you if it's a difference between a $50 bottle and a $5,000 bottle. So I know I could be deceived at that point.
3, supplier. Do you know the retailer or the supplier? And do you trust them?
So when you turn that box of cereal or bottle of juice over and read back, there's a lot of information there that's required by law that's helpful to the consumer.
And then question 4, are you buying this item online The supply chain can be shrouded in more mystery when shopping online.
I mean, come on, man. Ordinary person, they're gonna read the back of that and they're not gonna know the difference. I mean, we've been so brainwashed, for lack of a better term, that not to mention they're not gonna teach that in schools. This is what you look out for, blah blah. You know what I mean? And there's been a thing that of people who would point that out is getting shut down. You know what I mean? And I'm telling you, man, I'm moving back there and so I could plant more and stuff. I don't even drink orange juice anymore. Buy it from the store and drink it. Now, before I came here, we didn't buy orange juice from the store. I walk into my backyard and pick my oranges off my orange branch. Off my orange tree, I should say. You know what I mean? And I'm going back to that, man, you know? Grow my own carrots, my own cucumbers and everything. Yeah, that's my plan. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go back there so I could get my natural vibe that I know, that I put in the labor for. And unfortunately, we have so many people in the world. Not everybody could do that. We have to depend on them. And you think about it. You're working so much and so hard and so many things to do just to stay afloat. And I'm talking about the ordinary man. When they go to the grocery store, they're just picking stuff up, man. They don't have time to stop and read labels and do all of that. You know what I mean? And so much of the things are scientifically labeled. They don't know what all that chemicals in there is or whether it's good or bad for you. They have to depend on the people who produce the stuff to tell them whether it's good or bad for them. But now that we have capitalism on steroids, they could lie to you and you don't know what's going on. Wow. See, that's just crazy.
So how did you find out about this website? Is it reputable?
It depends on how you find that supplier.
And finally, 5, complain. Okay, it's not a question, but the Food Fraud Prevention think tank says if the retailer is legit, they will want to know.
Manufacturers can be the victims as well.
The FDA also relies on consumers' reports.
In recent decades, fraudsters have gotten more sophisticated in the techniques they use to fake the food products. And that means that our detection methods and our test methods and standards have to be better at detecting fraud.
That's why the U.S. Pharmacopoeia Convention provides a framework for organizations to detect its vulnerabilities.
We have food fraud mitigation guidance, so it is a supply chain risk management tool to really take a look at which ones are the more risky products suspected to be adulterated.
Sometimes it feels like this is not that big of a deal, but the more fraud...
You know what I was thinking? Like right now, there's a new card. Okay, for people who are watching this here and they're not in America, there's something called an EBT card. And it's where the government give people who are struggling a card, sort of like a credit card type thing, but just for food, to go buy food and stuff. Well, lately there's something else called a health card. And the only thing that you could get on there is healthy stuff. And people still come in there and try to buy all the unhealthy stuff with that card. Even with them saying, hey, this is to buy healthy food like vegetable and stuff like that, they're still trying to buy the other stuff. And some of the people have both cards. So what happened in here is they're still buying all the unhealthy stuff and still trying to use the health card to buy all the unhealthy stuff. And here's the thing. I thought that the health card was something coming from the government here, but it's not. It's something that is coming from the pharmaceutical companies, from the pharmacies. No, I'm sorry, not them. The insurance companies. So where are they making money off of that? They gotta be making money off of that somehow. Maybe by subsidies or so. I have to look into that some more. But it's the insurance companies that's bringing out these cards. You know what I mean? And I'm gonna tell you, it's gonna start happening more and more. Now imagine if grocery stores come out with a card like that and do some parlaying and stuff to... You're going to go buy all that stuff. And then again, you can't really blame the grocery stores because like they show you on here, there's like a chain from where it all come from. They're just selling the stuff. The people who manufacture it. So here's the deal. You can't really blame the farmer who is growing the stuff because it's going through so many different hands to get to the people who sell the stuff. So it seems like most of the problem is the middle people. Now also keep in mind that a lot of the grocery stores, they own places that is doing, they own their own brands. Now another question out of that is, even if they own their own brand, are they, what is the word I'm looking for? Do they have other companies that are actually doing it and they're not really regulating those companies? They have to regulate themselves. It's kind of like a government regulating itself without the input of the people. Man, it's all complicated, man, but most people don't think about that. Like I said, they just go to the grocery store and they buy their stuff. You know what I mean? Because they gotta eat. They just have to eat, man.
Fraudsters are able to achieve, the more we end up paying in the end as consumers.
These cases rarely result in criminal penalties. If you wanted to be like a drug dealer and import heroin and you get arrested on a large scale, you're going to go to jail. But if you can make $80 million importing adulterated honey, and then you're going to get a slap on the wrist and some fines, why wouldn't you do food instead of drugs if there's no basically criminal downside to it? So as long as we don't take it seriously, why should the perpetrators take it seriously?
What we want is the food industry just to be focused on making food and not have to worry about looking over our shoulder, checking different suppliers. And that's going to impact more food being produced, better food, safer food, less expensive food. There's plenty of things for us to worry about in the world today, and food fraud should not be one of those.
Wow. That's that, and the thing about it is the everyday person know what they eating isn't healthy and there's additives in it that shouldn't be there. But it's a sense of helplessness. How are you going to change it? You can't go on a hunger strike. You can't tell your kid, hey, you can't eat that today because you have to go hungry because they're doing this or they're doing that. We have to depend on other entities to make sure that that's happening. And when there's money going, that palm is getting greased. Who cares about anything anymore? Wow. This is like, it's not... what it opened my eye to is the whole process of how the things get to where they are. That's what opened my eye there and thing. I hope you guys found this video informative as I did. You understand what I'm saying? I'll leave a link to the video in the description also. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. You all take care of each other, all right? Eat healthy. Cool runnings.